And data, even data is problematic, but experience exists.
Yes.
Like the world exists and we experience it. We change that to facts. A fact is an interpretation.
Yes.
Because it's only looking at part of reality.
Yeah, totally.
And this is where...
Well, where... Okay, so
and
where...
this is where interprojection comes in.
Yeah.
Right? It's the recognition... It's the recognition that although reality exists, existence exists...
I have choice in how I see it.
Right. And I might not even have choice because the filter I'm using is unconscious.
Yes.
And so it already, always gives me reality. Right? I'm always dealing with my interprojections. I interpret the world, what it is, and I project my meaning onto it. What does it mean to me? And what I project determines what I care about, and therefore what I notice and what I interpret. Which leads to genius cycles.
Right.
I put my attention on something. Why? Because I care about it. How do I know to care about it? I've seen it before. I've recognized the pattern. Most of the patterns that we recognize are taught to us through language. They're taught to us through our culture. So we inherit a whole set of filters. And part of awareness, part of the job of a thriving awareness, is to question those filters. To interrogate them, as the postmodern says, to interrogate, right? Not to question it, to fucking interrogate, right? Not inquiry, interrogate, right? Inquiry is a better word. But the idea of interrogation is powerful. It's to say, I am not going to let your version stand. I am going to question you in such a way that's confronting. Right? To begin to look at how much of our life is agreement versus experience. And to recognize that that's an asymptote, right? Right? It's an asymptote. We're never going to get to complete reality because it's always interprojected, but we can continually refine. We can continually add dimensions, make new distinctions, integrate them into the whole. We can take our existing distinctions and compare them against one another.
And the consciousness is a product of reality. That reality is primary and consciousness is secondary.
Consciousness is part of reality.
Yes.
Without reality,
there would be no consciousness.
There not only and that we can say that that's a statement, like that's an assertion. Without reality, there would be no consciousness. How do you know? How do you know that consciousness wasn't in some void and then created reality?
Well, the void would have to be a real void.
Right. That's and why do you? Because consciousness presupposes existence. The idea of consciousness, you can't, right?
Well,
right.
this
is the thing. So, consciousness is a floating abstraction, right? What does consciousness mean? Well, consciousness is an abstraction I get from looking at multiple experiences and saying that I notice this pattern of I notice. Therefore, there's a consciousness that's experiencing it. Nietzsche said, I think, therefore I am. Right? He said, Descartes said, I think, therefore I am. He got caught up in language. Right? What would be more appropriate to say is, thoughts exist. Right? But because I'm caught up in language and grammar, I say, I'm thinking them. That was Descartes' main mistake. Thoughts exist.
Is it even more accurate to say I am, therefore I think?
That's what Rand said. Yeah, that's what Rand he said in John Galt's speech. He says, I am here to reverse a costly historical answer. The correct answer is not I think, therefore I am, but I am, therefore I will think.
Yes. That am, okay, so here's the here's the thing about here's the narcissistic trip. I guess I'm actually getting this. Like, this is the narcissistic trip.
That's what Wilber says. Wilber says, why are people attracted to postmodernism?
Right.
Why do people read about Thomas Kuhn? Almost no one has read Structure of Scientific Revolutions. I don't know if you've read it. I'm sure I've loaned out my copy because I always loan out all mine. There it is. Oh, I still got it. It's sweet. I used to have like five copies of this. So, Structure of Scientific Revolutions. Are you familiar with that book? Okay. So, you will start seeing this everywhere. You will start seeing this everywhere. Are you familiar with the idea of a paradigm?
Yeah.
Okay. This is where that word comes from.
This
book it was the popularization. It's not the invention of the word. But Thomas Kuhn asked this question. He said, what is the structure of scientific revolutions? Why do we have this thing where all of a sudden science is going along and then it changes and starts seeing new things? What causes that and what stops it? Right? And you could say that at heart, what it is that there's an existing paradigm that people are bought into.
Yes. Agreement.
Right? Agreement. We're going to see the world a certain way.
Okay, so it may have, the origination may have come from looking at reality, making distinctions.
But
then people take those ideas without the experience, they believe in them, it becomes a floating abstraction.
Yes, partially that, and partially it just becomes one of the filters that you look through, and so you find evidence that supports your filter.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, what are the elements? Well, it depends on where you're at in history. For a long time, there were 4 or 5 elements. Right? You've got earth, air, fire, water, and perhaps spirit, depending on your system. Right? Well, that's just a way of categorizing.
Yes.
Right? And when you look in the world, you see, oh, look, okay, this would probably be, well, we didn't have plastic back then, so really we were dealing with a lot of, you know, earth. Trees are earth, and dirt's earth, but then you got water, that's different, and air, that's different, and fire, that's different. Right? So once you've got that filter, you can then use it to project the world. And it gives you some power.
Right.
What caused us to move from the 4 elements to the periodic table? What caused us to make that shift? How did that happen? Who fought it and who fought for it? Right? That's the question he asks. He goes through a whole bunch of different shifts in science and says, how did that happen? Like a battery. How did we start thinking about batteries and the storage of energy and how we understand what a battery is? How do we understand that? Well, there was one time when we thought about it one way. The scientific community in general thought about it one way. And then there was a transition where we started thinking about it a new way. And the new way was better, but fundamentally different than before. Right? Like with the periodic table, we stopped looking at what it looks like on the outside, and we started looking at the structure of the atomic structure that creates it. That shift, they're different worlds.
Yeah.
Different paradigms.
Yeah.
Right? It's a different paradigm. It's a different way of looking, a different way of interpreting what's happening that leads to different data. Right? So what he said is, when you're looking at scientific revolutions, if I were to summarize in the grossest possible way, what leads to a paradigm finally shifting in a science? And he basically said, the people who are in power die. And then the new people who've got new theories get into power, and that becomes the dominant paradigm. Right? That it's difficult to shift a paradigm because you're dealing with different things. Right? I'm looking, look, this is Earth. Right? This is solid versus water versus air versus fire. I mean, what is all this atomic? I don't even know what that is. Right? It's hard for these people to have a conversation because they're looking at different parts of they're looking through different paradigms and therefore interpreting different data, different facts. And so he says, what causes these different paradigms? Right? Well, the people who are in power have the dominant paradigm. That's why it's dominant, because they're in power.
Yeah.
And in science, they're the ones with the professorships, they're the ones with the grants, they're the ones who